The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is here.
Before we talk about Rome, before we talk about clay courts and rankings and what happens next, let me give you one number: 171,000 people. That is how many people watched a 20-year-old from the Philippines sit down in front of journalists and answer questions. Not a match, not a highlight, a press conference. And while she was doing that, Carlos Alcaraz, two-time Wimbledon champion, reigning French Open winner, the most decorated young man in tennis, pulled 29,000.
As a tennis country, you can hardly even remember a player from the Philippines, and then you all of a sudden get this talent.
So she takes, this is part of the learning experience. She's too good a player. She'll figure it out. And what I like is her resilience.
Coco Gauff, 29,000. The defending Australian Open champion, Aryna Sabalenka, 9,000. Alex Ayala drew nearly 6 times the audience of the world's #1 for a press conference. Now you understand why Martina Navratilova stopped mid-broadcast and said what she said. 18 Grand Slam singles titles, 9 Wimbledon championships, one of 2 women in tennis history who can genuinely argue for the title of greatest of all time. That is who interrupted a live Australian Open broadcast in January 2026. Not to praise Ila's forehand, not to admire her fitness regime, but to make a direct structural demand of a Grand Slam institution. The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is here. Lindsay Davenport stood beside her and called Ayala probably the most famous female athlete the Philippines has ever produced. On BBC Radio 5 Live, Great Britain's Billie Jean King Cup captain Anne Keothavong heard about the queues forming outside Court 6 and said simply, "I couldn't believe the queues. Who's on the scheduling team? 3 voices, 3 separate platforms, 1 verdict. They put her on the wrong court. Court 6 holds approximately 1,500 people. The queue outside stretched hundreds of yards through Melbourne Park. Families who had driven across the city. Couples who had taken the day off. Fans who had flown in from other Australian states specifically for this match. They stood in that line for hours. Many of them never made it through the gates. Security cleared the overflow after the match had already begun." The Australian Open's official response was that it would take it as a learning for next year. That sentence is more revealing than anything else said publicly about Ayala in 2026. Because if a tournament that had every piece of information available to it, the record-breaking press conference numbers, Melbourne's 60,000-strong Filipino community, the social media engagement unlike anything a player outside the top 30 had ever generated, if that tournament still needed a crowd scene to teach it a lesson, then what happened wasn't a scheduling error. It was a failure of imagination. Now meet VV as a Filipina living in Sydney. She traveled to Melbourne, not for the Australian Open, not for a holiday, not even for tennis in general, but specifically for one match, specifically for Ayala. When asked why she made that trip, she said, "She always carries the flag and the country proudly. She's becoming a national hero. Everyone stops what they're doing and tunes in. One woman, one face, one journey from Sydney to Melbourne on faith. Multiply her by the thousands who showed up that day. Then ask yourself what those same people did when the next opportunity came around." As of this week, before a single point has been played in Rome, videos and reports are already documenting thousands of Filipino fans gathered outside the Foro Italico. Ayala was filmed thanking supporters who had traveled to Italy before the main draw even began. Ticket demand has surged. The scenes forming outside those marble gates look very familiar, because those fans didn't wait for a result. They didn't wait for a ranking. They booked flights to one of the most historically loaded cities in the world on pure belief. And in this story, belief has a way of being repaid. Let's go back 8 days. April 24th, 2026. Ayala walks off the clay in Madrid after losing 2-6, 1-6 to Elise Mertens in under an hour. No contested third set, no dramatic tiebreak, no moral victory buried in the scoreline. It was her 3rd straight loss on clay this season.